This is the ultra sequential mixing valve. The valve has changed a bit over the years. It's a slightly different body shape and it has various handles, a ceramic handle and a chrome handle. That if you have any problems with this valve, Ultra do a service pack that will solve anything if it's dripping or you have any temperature problems. The only thing to do before maybe ordering a service pack is just to check that the inlet filters are quite clear. It's more difficult if it's a recessed valve because there's a plate in front of it. Nevertheless, if you can get into these, we need to unscrew them and check the filters that fit in here. Once you've done that, if these are reasonably clear, then the next thing to do is to actually service the valve, put the new service pack into the valve. Now we need to strip the valve down to get into put the new service kit in. There's a front bit here that generally just pulls off fairly straightforwardly. It's just held on with an O-ring. And this is where the old valve and the new valve differ slightly. The old valve has this cap as part of a casting. With the newer ones, this comes apart like so. The difficulty with the valve generally is to get the body away from the main part of the valve. It often can be tight. There's no place to put to get a spanner properly on it. So the best thing to use is a strap wrench. Pop it on like that, and basically unscrew it from there, and it generally comes away. If you can't use a strap wrench, then you've really got to use something fairly hefty, but remember to put a piece of cloth or something around it to protect the valve from damaging the chrome. This is obviously slackened this one off earlier, and here's the main part of the valve. This part's the wax capsule. That's actually the bit that controls the temperature. And what we need to do is take this bit out, because this is one of the parts that gets replaced. Now, this brass piece is on a spring, so be careful when you take it out. It's not going to jump out, but just make sure you've got a hold of it when you undo the screws. This really just pulls out fairly easily. This is the whole part of this, just one of the bits that gets replaced. This is part of the service kit. On some of the older ones you'll see this is made of plastic, but in this case it's just a case of popping a new one straight back in. There's no worry about orientation in this, it can go in anyway. The only thing that makes it a little easier is if you pop one of the screws back into the hole and just give it a couple of quick turns. It doesn't need to go in very much. You can then push this back in and it will slip past the screw, and then you just need to do the screw up. It makes it easier. And then when you're putting these screws in, what you need to do is make sure you tighten them down fairly evenly, a little bit at a time. Rather, don't take one all the way down. So take them down a bit at a time. And so that's that part of the valve replaced. We come to this part. There's a circlip that holds this on. Just pop the circlip off. On the older valves there's no circlip, slightly differently shaped around here. This pops out, and really just a case of popping the new part. This comes as part of the service kit. Pop this back in. And the thing to watch is that there's a key on here and a key in here. Make sure that the keys slot into each other, pop it in place, and replace the circlip. The circlip back in, and then we put the wax capsule back in. One of the things to make this a little bit easier, when this is on the wall, the wax capsule has a tendency to want to fall out. So what to do is just ease the spring out a little bit, just the tip here, just ease that out, just a tiny bit. And then what happens is it will grip in here and won't fall out. So when you offer these two parts together, they should go back together quite easily. Just make sure that it's a snug fit. And then we tighten this back up, put the other bits and bobs back on, connect it up, turn the water on, and that's the valve head, the service kit. The only thing we may need to do now is to set the temperature. I'm assuming the valve's back on the wall and you've got the water turned on and you're not quite happy with the temperature. The way to adjust the temperature is you need a 2mm Allen key and pop it down the centre, and to make it hotter you turn it anti-clockwise, about a quarter turn at a time. Leave it for 10 seconds or so for the temperature to settle. If you're still not happy, another quarter turn, and so on. You don't want to turn it any more than 2 full turns. That's how you adjust the temperature.